Imagine the King of England, a man whose very presence could alter the course of politics and the mood of a city, slipping unnoticed into the streets of London. Imagine Henry VIII, notorious for his authority, appetite, and temper, blending among commoners, listening to their complaints, observing their lives, and perhaps learning more than any advisor could teach him. How did a monarch so powerful choose to walk unseen among the people? And what truths did he uncover about his own kingdom? By the early 16th century, Henry VIII had established himself as one of the most formidable monarchs in European history, ascending to the throne in 1509. He was young, charismatic, and determined to assert his authority. Known for his imposing physical presence, commanding personality, and ruthless decision-making, Henry also harbored a keen interest in understanding the realities of his kingdom firsthand. He sought to know not only the policies that his ministers enacted, but also the daily experiences, struggles, and sentiments of ordinary Londoners. Henry's court was a world of opulence, ritual, and political intrigue. Advisors, courtiers, and nobles often filtered information before it reached the king, presenting news with a bias that reflected their own priorities and ambitions. Aware of this, Henry sometimes grew frustrated with second-hand accounts, desiring unfiltered insight into his subjects' lives. This desire led him to take extraordinary measures, walking incognito among the people of London, wearing simple attire, and adopting a persona that allowed him to move unseen among the crowds. The king's disguises were more than a matter of clothing, they were calculated performances. Henry would don plain garments, sometimes covered with a hood or cloak, and alter his demeanor to avoid drawing attention. Though he retained his commanding presence, he learned to modulate his gait, speech, and posture, blending with merchants, craftsmen, and laborers. These excursions were not mere amusement, they were carefully orchestrated ventures into the social realities of his city. Historical records suggest that Henry used these undercover visits to gather intelligence, test loyalty, and assess public sentiment in the bustling streets of London. He could observe the functioning of markets, the attitudes of commoners toward taxation, and the grievances that might otherwise be hidden from courtly eyes. These forays allowed him to gain a rare perspective on governance, revealing both the strengths and weaknesses of his administration. The risks of such outings were substantial. Henry was a recognizable figure, and exposure could have provoked panic, reverence, or even danger if discovered by the wrong people. His life could have been threatened by discontented subjects or political enemies. Yet the king seemed undeterred by these dangers, driven by curiosity, ambition, and a desire to rule with a more complete understanding of his kingdom. His willingness to take these risks reflects both his audacity and his dedication to kingship. Accounts from contemporaries hint at the mix of amusement, astonishment, and sometimes fear these secret excursions caused among those who glimpsed the disguised monarch. A commoner might encounter a hooded man asking pointed questions about taxes or local hardships, unaware that the sovereign himself was observing. These encounters, though brief and indirect, provided Henry with insights impossible to gain from courtiers' reports alone. He saw firsthand the resilience, ingenuity, and frustrations of his people, witnessing the realities of life in Tudor London beyond the palace walls. Yet these excursions were not purely observational. Henry also used them to test loyalty and character. Courtiers suspected of intrigue or rebellion, merchants accused of deceit, or officials suspected of corruption could be confronted subtly by the king in disguise. A method of informal investigation that bypassed the layers of protocol and pretense at court. The king's direct engagement with the population allowed him to assess truthfulness, courage, and loyalty in a manner uniquely accessible to someone walking among the people incognito, even beyond political strategy. These clandestine walks provided Henry with a rare sense of connection to his subjects. Amid the power, ceremony, and danger of monarchy, the ability to witness daily life firsthand offered insight into the rhythms of the city, the attitudes of its citizens, and the challenges faced by ordinary people. the king could experience both the vibrancy and the hardship of London, gaining empathy that was impossible to cultivate within the confines of the palace. By the end of these secret ventures, Henry returned to court with observations that influenced policy, informed governance, and shaped decisions. His knowledge of London streets, markets, and populace allowed him to make judgments grounded in real-world experience, not just political theory. Yet one lingering question persisted. Did the king truly understand the hearts of his people? Or were these fleeting glimpses insufficient to bridge the gulf between sovereign and subject? The story of Henry VIII walking among Londoners in disguise offers a rare glimpse of a monarch's curiosity and audacity. It reminds us that even the most powerful rulers sometimes sought perspective beyond the gilded walls of court, taking risks to understand the lives of those they govern. These excursions, though secretive, reveal the intersection of personal curiosity, political strategy, and the timeless human desire to see the world through another's eyes. By the mid-16th century, Henry VIII had become both a figure of immense authority and a man increasingly curious about the lives of his subjects. His decision to walk incognito in London was not a whim, but a deliberate effort to understand the realities of urban life, gauge public opinion, and test the loyalty and character of those surrounding him. Yet these secret excursions were fraught with challenges and dangers that few monarchs would willingly confront. Navigating the crowded streets of Tudor London required careful planning and acute awareness. The city was alive with merchants hawking goods, artisans working in open workshops, beggars soliciting alms, and an ever-present crowd of commoners whose reactions could range from fear to admiration or hostility. Henry had to move with caution, avoiding recognition while still observing, questioning, and interacting. One misstep, a slip of language, a gesture of familiarity, or the wrong turn down a street could expose his identity, creating immediate danger. Despite the risks, the king frequently encountered situations that tested both his wit and judgment. On one occasion, according to historical chronicles, Henry overheard merchants arguing about taxes and corruption. Posing as a simple gentleman, he interjected subtly, asking pointed questions and listening intently. The reactions he received varied. Some answered candidly, hoping to impress the stranger, while others vented grievances without realizing they were speaking to the monarch himself. These interactions offered Henry insights into public sentiment that no report from a court official could replicate. Beyond the practical challenges, the king faced the constant psychological strain of concealment. Walking unnoticed required constant vigilance, watching for familiar faces, adjusting his demeanor, and maintaining the careful balance between curiosity and caution. The thrill of incognito observation was tempered by the very real fear of recognition. Londoners, particularly those accustomed to the royal presence at court or in ceremonial processions, might notice his stature, gait, or features. A misstep could result not only in personal embarrassment, but also in a potential security threat. Henry also discovered that being incognito illuminated social hierarchies in stark relief. From the bustling markets to the quiet alleyways, he saw the inequalities that defined everyday life, the struggles of the laborer, the ingenuity of artisans, and the frustrations of shopkeepers burdened by taxation and regulation. These observations were eye-opening, revealing a world far removed from the carefully curated environment of the palace. Henry could witness firsthand the resilience, resourcefulness, and occasional defiance of his subjects, experiences that shaped his understanding of governance. One particularly notable encounter involved a group of street performers and apprentices, whose clever wordplay and bold humor both amused and intrigued the disguised monarch. Henry observed how satire and jest could mask criticism and how humor became a subtle tool for ordinary citizens to express dissent or commentary on royal policies. These encounters highlighted the layers of communication and resistance that existed beneath the surface of everyday life and education and public sentiment that few rulers ever experienced firsthand. Yet the king's excursions were not without peril. On several occasions, his identity was nearly revealed. Merchants or bystanders who recognized the familiar stature or bearing of the king approached with curiosity, either seeking favor, attempting to flatter, or reporting suspicious behavior to authorities. Each close call demanded rapid thinking, improvisation, and the ability to maintain composure under pressure. Historical accounts suggest that the thrill of near discovery, combined with the insights gained, reinforced Henry's fascination with walking among his people. The lessons Henry learned extended beyond observation. By moving incognito, he witnessed the discrepancies between courtly reports and the lived realities of citizens. Ministers and advisors often filtered information to protect their positions or appease royal expectations. By contrast, conversations on the streets were raw, candid, and occasionally startling. Henry realized the importance of direct engagement with the populace, not only to understand grievances, but also to test loyalty, honesty, and the courage of those around him. Beyond governance, these ventures offered personal revelations. Henry gained a sense of empathy, an appreciation for the daily struggles of commoners, and an understanding of the ingenuity required to navigate the urban environment of Tudor London. These insights may have influenced his decisions in taxation, law enforcement, and public policy, bridging the gap between the monarchy and the subjects whose lives he oversaw. Yet the tension between the safety of the palace and the unpredictability of the streets remained constant, a reminder of the thin line between curiosity and danger. Even as Henry navigated these excursions with caution, one question lingered. Did walking among his people truly allow him to understand them? Or did the artificiality of disguise, however well executed, limit his perception? Could a king, ever powerful and ever watched by history, genuinely immerse himself in the ordinary lives of those he ruled? Or would the very act of observation always create distance? No matter the intent, Henry VIII's incognito ventures reveal a monarch deeply engaged with the realities of his realm, willing to take personal risks for insight and understanding. Yet they also highlight the fragility of power, the complexities of human perception, and the challenges inherent in bridging social and political divides. His walks among the people were both an act of curiosity and a strategic exercise, demonstrating the lengths to which a ruler might go to observe, learn, and test the world beyond the palace walls. Despite careful planning, Henry VIII's clandestine walks through London could not remain entirely secret forever. Rumors occasionally spread of a mysterious figure asking pointed questions, listening intently, and disappearing without a trace. Courtiers whispered, commoners speculated, and the legend of the unknown gentleman who seemed to know too much began to circulate in taverns, markets, and workshops. In some cases, Henry's presence was recognized by sharp-eyed citizens, though few fully grasped the identity of the man observing them. One notable incident involved a confrontation with a merchant accused of evading taxes. Henry, in disguise, questioned the man about his goods and accounts. The merchant, unaware of the monarch's identity, was candid in his responses, revealing both the intricacies of trade and his small acts of subterfuge to avoid financial obligations. When the king eventually revealed himself or subtly indicated his true authority, the merchant's reactions ranged from astonishment to terror. These moments illustrated not only the power inherent in observation, but also the fragile boundary between curiosity and authority. Henry's incognito excursions also revealed the ingenuity and resilience of Londoners. He saw craftsmen adapting to economic pressures, laborers negotiating with local authorities, and common citizens creatively navigating the rigid social hierarchies imposed by both tradition and law. These observations provided Henry with practical insight into governance, how policies affected daily life, how loyalty was earned or tested, and how justice or the perception of it shaped societal behavior. The king began to understand that ruling effectively required more than decrees and legislation. It demanded empathy, observation, and a nuanced understanding of human nature. Yet, these ventures were not without criticism. Some advisors questioned the wisdom of such personal risk, fearing that exposure could destabilize the court or provoke unrest. Others worried that the king's fascination with incognito observation reflected an indulgence in personal curiosity rather than a disciplined approach to governance. Henry, however, seemed undeterred. He understood that the lessons gleaned from walking among his people were invaluable, offering insights that no report, memorandum, or official counsel could provide. The long-term impact of Henry's disguised excursions is subtle but significant. By observing his subjects firsthand, he gained a nuanced understanding of London's social and economic realities. He recognized the importance of direct engagement, the potential for rebellion or unrest, and the ingenuity of ordinary citizens. These lessons may have influenced subsequent policy decisions, from taxation and trade regulation to law enforcement and civic management. Even as Henry returned to the ceremonial and political world of court life, the streets of London left a lasting imprint on his approach to kingship. There was also a personal dimension to these experiences. Walking incognito allowed Henry a form of freedom, a chance to step outside the rigid hierarchy of court and witness life without the filter of protocol. He could move among ordinary people, observe human behavior in its raw form, and even enjoy moments of amusement or insight that would have been impossible within palace walls. This rare glimpse into unvarnished reality not only informed his rule, but also reminded him of the humanity he governed, a reality that often eluded rulers ensconced in privilege. Yet even as these experiences enriched his understanding, one lingering question remained. Could a monarch ever truly know his people if their perception was always mediated by disguise and distance? Henry's adventures highlighted the challenge of bridging the gap between ruler and subject, between power and empathy. The act of observation, while enlightening, also underscored the limitations inherent in monarchy, the impossibility of fully inhabiting the lives of those governed, no matter how clever or daring the king might be. Ultimately, Henry VIII's incognito walks through London represent a remarkable intersection of curiosity, strategy, and personal audacity. They reveal a ruler willing to risk recognition, scandal, and danger to gain insight into the world beyond the palace. These clandestine adventures illustrate both the potential and limits of royal power, the ability to observe, influence, and learn, tempered by the impossibility of escaping the very structures and expectations that define monarchy. Henry VIII's story reminds us that even the most powerful individuals may seek perspective through humility and daring, that observation can be a tool of governance, and that understanding one's people often requires venturing into the unpredictable, chaotic world they inhabit. For a monarch accustomed to command and ceremony, walking among the people was more than a curiosity, it was a rare and profound engagement with the lived reality of his kingdom. Picture this: the Queen of England, a woman whose very face commands loyalty and whose word shapes the destiny of a nation, slipping quietly through the foggy streets of London. Under the cover of night, Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, feared and admired in equal measure, wandered unnoticed among commoners, listening to whispers, observing life beyond the palace walls. What did she discover about her people in those secret excursions? And how did it shape the reign of one of England's greatest monarchs? By the mid-16th century, Elizabeth I had ascended to the throne in 1558, inheriting a nation fraught with religious tension, political intrigue, and external threats. England was still recovering from years of dynastic struggle, with factions vying for power and influence at court and abroad. Elizabeth, intelligent, politically astute, and cautious, recognized the necessity of understanding her kingdom not just from reports at court, but through direct observation of her subjects' lives. Elizabeth's fascination with incognito exploration stemmed from a desire to maintain control while remaining informed. Unlike Henry VIII, who often relied on imposing presence and physicality, Elizabeth's approach emphasized subtlety, wit, and discretion. She frequently disguised herself in plain clothing, altering her posture, voice and mannerisms to blend seamlessly with the bustling streets and taverns of London. These excursions were typically undertaken at night, when the city's activity was subdued yet vibrant enough to provide a glimpse into the realities of urban life. Historical accounts suggest that Elizabeth's motivations were multifaceted. She sought intelligence on public sentiment, particularly regarding religion, taxation, and loyalty to the crown. By walking among her people, she could gauge the mood of the city, detect unrest, and uncover potential threats before they reached the palace or court. Moreover, she used these journeys to understand the lives of ordinary citizens, their hardships, ingenuity, and resilience, which informed her policies and strengthened her ability to govern effectively. The risks were considerable. Elizabeth was a recognizable figure, and exposure could have led to panic, scandal, or even assassination. England's streets were crowded with people whose loyalties were uncertain, and the presence of enemies or spies posed a constant danger. Yet Elizabeth, ever cautious and strategic, employed careful planning. She chose the timing, routes, and disguises with meticulous attention, often accompanied by a trusted attendant who remained discreetly at a distance. Her awareness of risk demonstrates both her intelligence and her understanding of the precarious balance between curiosity and security. During these nocturnal wanderings, Elizabeth observed London in ways that were impossible from the palace. She encountered merchants negotiating deals, apprentices honing skills, and citizens expressing opinions, sometimes candidly, sometimes humorously, about governance, taxation, and the challenges of daily life. These moments provided the Queen with direct insight into the social fabric of her realm, highlighting disparities, resilience, and the subtle dynamics of loyalty and dissent. One memorable encounter reportedly involved Elizabeth overhearing a heated debate in a tavern about religious reforms and the crown's policies. Disguised and listening attentively, she noted the arguments, the tone, and the underlying concerns of ordinary Londoners. These insights allow her to gauge the effectiveness of religious settlement policies, anticipate areas of potential unrest, and refine communication with her subjects. By stepping into their world, Elizabeth transformed abstract reports into lived reality. Beyond governance, Elizabeth's incognito excursions reinforced her personal understanding of power and humanity. Walking among her people allowed her to witness courage, cunning, and resilience firsthand. She saw citizens navigating hardship, ingenuity in commerce, and subtle expressions of loyalty or critique that court reports could never capture. These observations enrich her perspective, revealing both the strengths and vulnerabilities of the society she ruled. Yet, even as Elizabeth gained insight and understanding, one unresolved question lingered. Could the Queen truly grasp the lives of her subjects, or were the veil a disguise, and her unavoidable status as monarch always barriers, even in the shadows? The dynamics of class, authority, and perception could never be fully erased. Her nightly journeys offered glimpses, lessons, and surprises, but did they ever fully bridge the gap between sovereign and subject? Elizabeth I's nocturnal wanderings illustrate a monarch's desire for knowledge, control, and empathy. They reveal a ruler willing to step beyond the palace walls, risk personal safety, and engage directly with the world she governed. These excursions, blending curiosity, strategy, and intelligence, left a subtle yet lasting impact on her reign, shaping decisions and reinforcing her awareness of the human reality underpinning political power. As Elizabeth I continued her nocturnal excursions through London, she faced challenges that tested her wit, composure, and understanding of her kingdom. Unlike the controlled environment of the palace, the streets offered unpredictability, from sudden confrontations to the sharp tone of a citizen emboldened by anonymity. Each journey required careful navigation, acute awareness, and a keen sense of human behavior, skills the Queen had cultivated through intelligence, observation, and experience. One night, while disguised as a simple gentlewoman, Elizabeth wandered through a bustling marketplace. Vendors hawked their wares under lantern light, and apprentices hurried with parcels or tools, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of trade and negotiation. She observed closely, listening to grievances about taxation, complaints about the inefficiency of certain guilds, and the subtle ways in which ordinary citizens circumvented regulations. These seemingly mundane details offered a vivid picture of the social and economic pressures shaping London life, details that no official report could fully capture. Yet Elizabeth's ventures were not without danger. The city streets were rife with individuals whose loyalties were uncertain, and the late hours heightened the risk of encounters with thieves, vagrants, or political agitators. On one occasion, historical anecdotes suggest, Elizabeth was nearly recognized by a keen-eyed merchant who remembered the Queen's visage from a courtly procession. Quick thinking and a change of voice and posture allowed her to evade discovery. But the incident underscored the constant peril of being in public incognito. Every interaction carried the possibility of exposure, and each close call reinforced the stakes of her secret journeys. Elizabeth also witnessed moments of ingenuity and courage among her people. She saw apprentices bargaining cleverly to secure fair deals, citizens assisting one another through hardship, and even small acts of defiance or criticism expressed through humor, song, or subtle satire. These observations were not trivial. They revealed the intelligence, resilience, and creativity of the subjects she governed. By blending into the crowd, she could see the human capacity to adapt, survive, and assert individuality even under the pressures of social hierarchy and royal authority. Perhaps most illuminating were Elizabeth's encounters with expressions of loyalty and dissent. In taverns, she overheard debates about religious reform, governance, and royal policies. Disguised, she could gauge public sentiment in its raw form, noting the passions, fears, and hopes of ordinary Londoners. Some conversations revealed admiration and respect for her leadership. Others hinted at dissatisfaction, impatience, or fear. Each observation was a lesson in perception, communication, and the intricate balance between authority and empathy. Elizabeth's disguise also allowed her to assess her advisor's influence indirectly. By listening to reports from citizens or observing officials who frequented the streets, she could detect discrepancies between public reality and the filtered information presented at court. This exercise in intelligence gathering was subtle but powerful, allowing the Queen to maintain awareness of the kingdom while testing the honesty and effectiveness of those around her. However, these experiences also illuminated the limits of incognito observation. Even in disguise, Elizabeth could not fully immerse herself in the lives of her subjects. Her movements were still constrained by the knowledge of her royal status, the need for discretion, and the ever-present risk of recognition. She could witness, inquire, and listen, but she could never truly inhabit the perspective of those she ruled. This tension between access and limitation was a subtle but persistent reminder of the complexities of monarchy. Yet, despite these limitations, the lessons of these nocturnal excursions were profound. Elizabeth gained a nuanced understanding of her people's resilience, intelligence, and humanity. She saw how societal structures, economic pressures, and political tensions intersected with daily life. She discovered the subtle ways in which authority was respected, challenged, and navigated. These insights informed her decisions as a monarch, providing a grounding in the lived reality of London that few rulers had ever experienced firsthand. Still, one question remained unresolved. Could the Queen, ever powerful and ever observed, truly understand? Did the hearts and minds of her people, even with disguise, careful planning, and firsthand observation? The gulf between sovereign and subject remained. Elizabeth's secret journeys offered remarkable insight, yet they also highlighted the persistent, unbridgeable distance imposed by status, expectation, and history. Elizabeth I's nighttime incognito adventures reveal a monarch deeply engaged with her kingdom, willing to risk personal safety for knowledge, understanding, and perspective. Her experiences in the streets of London reflect both the audacity and intelligence of a ruler, seeking truth beyond the palace walls. but they also serve as a reminder the human experience is complex, and even the most insightful ruler can only glimpse it through the lens of curiosity, courage, and imagination. Even the careful planning of Elizabeth I could not entirely prevent the eventual consequences of her nocturnal wanderings. While most citizens were unaware that a queen moved among them, stories began circulating of a mysterious woman in plain garb asking pointed questions, observing quietly, and vanishing into the night. Some speculated she was a noblewoman testing the city's pulse. Others whispered of magical or secretive influence. Little did they know that it was their sovereign herself, walking unseen. Gathering insight into the lives and hearts of her subjects, Elizabeth's experiences in disguise culminated in moments of revelation that informed both her governance and her understanding of human nature. By witnessing economic hardship firsthand, she gained empathy for the struggles of merchants, craftsmen, and laborers, observing clever navigation of rules, negotiation tactics, and acts of subtle defiance. She recognized both the ingenuity and resilience of ordinary citizens. These insights provided her with a nuanced perspective on social dynamics, taxation, and the consequences of policy decisions, grounding her decisions in lived reality rather than filtered reports from advisors. The Queen also discovered the delicate balance between loyalty and dissent. Conversations overheard in taverns or marketplaces revealed the complex ways people expressed both reverence and critique. Elizabeth noted that respect was earned through understanding, fairness, and careful communication, not merely through royal decree. This lesson influenced her leadership style, reinforcing the importance of measured authority, strategic empathy, and awareness of public sentiment, a skill that would help solidify her reputation as one of England's most effective monarchs. There were, however, risks and near discoveries that reminded Elizabeth of the constant vulnerability inherent in walking among her subjects. On more than one occasion, keen observers in the streets suspected her identity. The tension of near exposure sharpened her awareness, teaching her the importance of adaptability, quick thinking, and composure under pressure. These experiences were lessons in both personal courage and practical governance, illustrating how observation, intelligence, and discretion intersect in the exercise of authority. The personal impact on Elizabeth cannot be overstated. Moving incognito allowed her to witness the full spectrum of human experience: loyalty, ingenuity, humor, fear, and frustration. These observations deepened her empathy and sharpened her political acumen. They also served as a reminder that even a powerful monarch exists within a complex web of social, economic, and political realities that cannot be fully controlled, only understood and navigated with intelligence and care. Yet even as Elizabeth returned to the ceremonial and political life of the palace, one lingering question persisted: could a sovereign ever truly inhabit the perspective of those she ruled? Disguise provided glimpses, insights, and understanding, but it could never fully erase the inherent distance between monarch and subject. The Queen's journeys revealed the limitations of observation and the inescapable gulf created by power, expectation, and history. Historically, Elizabeth's secret excursions reinforced her reputation as a shrewd, empathetic, and insightful ruler. Her ability to engage directly with her subjects, even under disguise, provided information that influenced policy, strengthened loyalty, and mitigated unrest. These ventures demonstrated that leadership is not solely a matter of command, but also of observation, understanding, and strategic engagement with the human realities that underpin authority. Ultimately, Elizabeth I's nocturnal walks among Londoners are a testament to curiosity, courage, and the relentless pursuit of understanding. They reveal a monarch who, despite the privileges and constraints of her position, sought connection, insight, and perspective beyond the palace walls. Her story reminds us that effective leadership requires not only power, but also awareness, empathy, and the willingness to step into the world as it is, not as one imagines it to be. Through these secret journeys, Elizabeth I left a subtle but enduring legacy. That true knowledge of a kingdom comes not only from reports and ceremonies but from direct observation, engagement, and a courageous willingness to walk among the people, unseen and unshielded, to witness life as it truly is. Imagine the Sun King himself, Louis XIV, walking beyond the gilded halls of Versailles, blending into the villages and towns of France, observing the lives of the people he ruled, the most powerful monarch in Europe, a man whose court dazzled the world with opulence and ceremony, choosing to step into the reality of daily life incognito. What did he discover about his subjects, their hardships, and the nature of power that no report from his ministers could reveal? By the mid-17th century, Louis XIV had established his reign as one of the most centralized and absolute in European history, ascending to the throne at the age of 5 in 1643. He grew into a monarch deeply conscious of image, authority, and the mechanisms of power. Versailles, with its unparalleled grandeur, was both a symbol of royal dominance and a carefully constructed stage, upon which his authority was displayed. Yet despite the splendor, Louis understood that true knowledge of his kingdom required more than courtly observation. It demanded first-hand insight into the lives of ordinary citizens. Louis's fascination with the daily realities of France was motivated by both strategy and curiosity. The king sought to understand the effects of taxation, the distribution of wealth, and the struggles of peasants and merchants who formed the backbone of his realm. Reports from ministers often filtered or sanitized information, presenting a world framed by political convenience. Louis, aware of this distortion, occasionally chose to leave Versailles in disguise, venturing into towns, villages, and markets to observe the people directly. The king's disguises were elaborate, yet subtle. He would dress in the clothing of a common noble or wealthy merchant, adjusting his posture, gait, and speech to avoid recognition. His aim was not merely to wander unnoticed, but to immerse himself enough to witness economic activity, social dynamics, and the resilience of his subjects under the pressures of taxation and state demands. These excursions allowed him to understand the intricate balance between monarchy and society in a tangible, experiential way. One of the primary objectives of Louis's secret journeys was to gauge public opinion and loyalty. By mingling with citizens, listening to their concerns, and observing interactions among community members, he could assess satisfaction or discontent with policies imposed from Versailles. These insights were invaluable, revealing the effectiveness or lack thereof of governance, the behavior of local officials, and the coping mechanisms ordinary people employed to navigate bureaucracy, taxation, and social obligations. Yet venturing into public spaces as the Sun King was not without risk. Louis's stature, bearing, and presence were distinctive. Exposure could have led to panic, reverence, or even attempts at assassination. Moreover, the streets of 17th century France were crowded, unpredictable, and often unruly. The king had to balance curiosity with caution, carefully selecting when, where, and how to engage with his subjects while ensuring the safety of both himself and those around him. During these excursions, Louis encountered a vivid spectrum of French society. He witnessed peasants working tirelessly in the fields, merchants negotiating with ingenuity, and artisans producing goods with meticulous skill. He observed the subtle forms of social negotiation, the ways in which power and influence were exercised at the local level, and the small but significant acts of agency that define daily life. These encounters provided insight into human resilience and ingenuity, offering a perspective that no courtly report could fully convey. Equally revealing were the glimpses into loyalty and dissent. Through careful observation, Louis could detect subtle criticism of authority, cautious challenges to taxation, or outright loyalty expressed in unexpected ways. He learned that respect and allegiance were not guaranteed by decree, but were cultivated through justice, fairness, and understanding of the human realities that underpin governance. These lessons would inform both his policies and the manner in which he exercised power over a diverse and complex kingdom. Yet even as Louis XIV moved through the towns and villages of France, one question lingered. Could a monarch, no matter how powerful or intelligent, truly understand the lives of the people he ruled, even with disguise, observation, and careful attention? The gulf between sovereign and subject remained. Could the Sun King ever bridge that gap entirely, or would his knowledge always be partial, filtered, and fleeting? Louis XIV's excursions among his subjects reveal a monarch striving for understanding, a ruler willing to risk personal safety to witness the reality of daily life. They highlight the tension between absolute power and the human experience, showing how curiosity, strategy, and audacity intersect in the practice of kingship. Through these secret journeys, Louis glimpsed the resilience, ingenuity, and complexity of his people, learning lessons that would shape the governance of France and solidify his legacy as one of Europe's most formidable rulers. As Louis XIV ventured into towns and villages beyond the gilded halls of Versailles, the realities of France confronted him directly. Unlike the controlled environment of the court, the streets, markets, and fields were alive with unpredictability. Each step brought potential recognition, confrontation, or revelation, demanding a careful balance between observation, discretion, and personal safety. On one particular excursion, the king, disguised as a wealthy merchant, walked through a busy provincial marketplace. Vendors displayed fruits, textiles, and handmade goods under the mid-morning sun. Apprentices carried supplies while peasants bargained for essential items, their voices blending into a chorus of daily life. Louis observed the negotiation tactics, the subtle tricks merchants employed to maximize profit, and the ways citizens navigated the rigid expectations imposed by social hierarchy and taxation. These everyday interactions, seemingly mundane, offered the Sun King insight into the functioning and resilience of his kingdom. The king also witnessed human ingenuity in action. In one village, he observed a miller cleverly circumventing excessive taxation by disguising quantities of grain, a tactic that amused and intrigued him. Elsewhere, he saw apprentices collaborating to outwit bureaucratic oversight while maintaining the loyalty of their patrons. Such observations revealed the resourcefulness of ordinary citizens, highlighting how creativity and cunning could shape survival under the pressures of governance. Yet Louis's excursions were fraught with danger. His distinctive presence, imposing stature, confident bearing, and noble manners risked exposure. On more than one occasion, keen-eyed villagers or merchants approached, suspicious of the stranger's knowledge and demeanor. The king had to improvise, relying on quick thinking, subtle shifts in speech, and strategic distance to maintain his cover. These near discoveries underscored the constant tension between curiosity and personal risk, illuminating the delicate line a monarch walked when entering the lives of those he ruled. The observations also revealed the subtle dynamics of loyalty and dissent. While some citizens expressed admiration and respect for authority, others spoke critically of policies or local officials. Louis noticed the cautious ways in which criticism was expressed through humor, satire, or veiled commentary. These interactions demonstrated the nuanced relationship between ruler and subject, highlighting the importance of understanding not only obedience but also sentiment, morale, and the hidden forms of resistance that shaped everyday life. Perhaps unexpectedly, Louis encountered moments of humility and empathy, witnessing the hardships of peasants working fields in harsh conditions, or families struggling to meet basic needs. The Sun King gained an appreciation for the human cost of policies enacted from afar. These glimpses into the realities of his subjects' lives illuminated the gap between royal perception and the lived experience of citizens. Even a monarch as powerful as Louis XIV could not ignore the physical and emotional toll of governance on ordinary people. The excursions also offered insight into the effectiveness of local governance. Louis could observe how officials, tax collectors, and magistrates executed orders, sometimes faithfully, other times corruptly or ineffectively. These observations highlighted discrepancies between policy intention and implementation, offering the king practical lessons about accountability, supervision, and the social consequences of administrative failure. Yet even as Louis XIV gained valuable knowledge, one unresolved question persisted. Could a monarch ever fully understand the people he ruled without the risk of bias, misinterpretation, or the unavoidable distance imposed by status? Even in disguise, he remained a sovereign, separate from the struggles, joys, and ingenuity of ordinary life. These excursions provided rare insight, but they also illuminated the persistent gulf between ruler and subject, a gap shaped by power, expectation, and social hierarchy. Louis XIV's incognito journeys reveal a ruler deeply engaged with the practical realities of governance. They highlight the interplay of curiosity, risk, and strategy in understanding a kingdom. Through observation, discretion, and direct engagement, the Sun King gained knowledge unavailable through reports or advisors, shaping his policies and deepening his comprehension of human behavior. Yet the limitations of disguise, proximity, and perception remained, a reminder of the complex relationship between authority and experience. Despite careful planning, Louis XIV's secret ventures into the towns and villages of France could not remain entirely unnoticed. Rumors began to spread of a mysterious, confident gentleman wandering marketplaces, observing citizens, and asking unusually pointed questions. Some dismissed these tales as gossip, others speculated about spies or noble visitors. But very few imagined the Sun King himself was behind the disguise. For Louis, these whispers confirmed that he was entering a realm of perception far beyond what the palace or court could ever reveal. A world alive with truth, cunning, and risk. One of the most consequential encounters occurred during a visit to a small provincial town. Disguised as a merchant, Louis witnessed a tense confrontation between a local tax collector and a group of villagers. The villagers protested excessive levies and expressed frustration with perceived corruption. Louis observed the interaction closely, noting the tone, body language, and arguments used. He saw not only the villagers' ingenuity and courage, but also the delicate dance of authority exercised by the local official. This first-hand insight revealed the gap between royal policy and local implementation, providing Louis with invaluable intelligence for refining governance. Throughout his excursions, Louis XIV encountered moments of both admiration and danger. A perceptive artisan once questioned his knowledge of trade regulations with such precision that Louis had to think quickly to maintain his cover. At another time, villagers expressed open disdain for authority in subtle, coded ways through songs, jokes, or indirect commentary. These instances highlighted the complexities of power and loyalty, showing that even the most absolute monarch could not fully control perception or sentiment. Every interaction reinforced the dual lessons of observation and humility, reminding Louis that leadership required more than authority. It required insight, discernment, and responsiveness. Louis also gained a profound understanding of the resilience and resourcefulness of his subjects. He saw families navigating scarcity, craftsmen innovating to maintain livelihood, and communities cooperating to overcome adversity. These glimpses into daily life revealed the ingenuity that sustained society under the pressures of taxation, governance, and hierarchical constraints. For a monarch whose reign was defined by grandeur and spectacle, witnessing these small yet critical acts of survival provided a perspective that no courtly ceremony or advisory report could replicate. The experiences were not merely observational, they shaped decision-making. By seeing the human consequences of policy firsthand, Louis could adjust expectations, influence tax collection, and refine laws to better serve the kingdom. He realized that governance was not a matter of imposing decrees from afar, but required understanding, engagement, and responsiveness to the realities of daily life. The Sun King learned that empathy, careful observation, and flexibility were essential tools in sustaining the loyalty and prosperity of his realm. However, The excursions also reinforced the inherent limitations of monarchy. Even in disguise, Louis could not fully inhabit the lives of his subjects. He remained an observer, a figure apart, constrained by the very authority he sought to understand. The insights he gained were invaluable, yet they came filtered through perception, improvisation, and interpretation, no matter how immersive the experience. The gulf between sovereign and subject remained a reminder that absolute power cannot erase human complexity in the aftermath of these clandestine journeys. Louis XIV returned to Versailles with a richer, more nuanced understanding of France. The observations informed policy, strengthened awareness of local governance, and provided a deeper comprehension of loyalty, dissent, and social resilience. His experiences underscore the interplay of curiosity, strategy, and empathy in rulership, demonstrating that even the most powerful monarchs relied on observation to supplement authority. Yet the ultimate lesson of Louis XIV's incognito excursions may lie in the tension between power and perception. They reveal a ruler simultaneously commanding and learning, observing and influencing, engaging and remaining apart. Louis saw the courage, ingenuity, and resilience of his people, but he also recognized the persistent distance imposed by status, expectation, and the limitations of disguise. His journeys highlight the enduring truth that knowledge, understanding, and empathy are as critical to leadership as authority and wealth. Louis XIV's story of walking among his subjects reminds us that even in the height of opulence and power, rulers may seek perspective through humility and daring. By stepping into the streets of France, he embraced risk, curiosity, and learning, revealing a monarch who understood that the human reality of governance cannot be fully captured through advisors or reports alone. These secret ventures, while subtle in their impact, left a lasting imprint on his approach to leadership, policy, and the complex dynamics of absolute rule. In the end, Louis XIV's incognito adventures demonstrate that true insight into society requires more than decrees and spectacle. It requires the courage to observe, the intelligence to interpret, and the willingness to engage with the human experience. Directly lessons as relevant today as they were in the sunlit streets and hidden alleys of 17th century France. Imagine the towering figure of Peter the Great, Tsar of Russia, walking unnoticed through the crowded streets of Moscow, a czar disguised among his own people, the ruler of the largest country in the world, famed for his reforms and military campaigns, stepping into the alleys, markets, and taverns of his capital to witness life as it truly was. What lessons did he learn about his kingdom, his people, and the human spirit that no courtier could ever convey? Peter I, later known as Peter the Great, assumed the Russian throne at a time of immense transition and challenge. Ascending formally in 1682, Russia was a vast, diverse empire, steeped in tradition, hierarchical, and often resistant to change. Peter recognized that in order to modernize his country, he needed more than military victories and decrees. He needed intimate knowledge of the realities of Russian society, from the peasant who tilled the land to the artisan who labored in workshops and the merchant navigating the growing economy. The Tsar's fascination with first-hand experience led him to embark on excursions in disguise, venturing among the very people whose lives and labor would define the future of Russia. Unlike European monarchs such as Louis XIV, Peter's approach was intensely practical. He was deeply interested in skills, trades, and craftsmanship, intending to impart knowledge that would modernize his country. To achieve this, he would disguise himself as a commoner, wandering the streets of Moscow and other towns, observing, questioning, and occasionally participating in trades and workshops. These journeys were as dangerous as they were illuminating. Russia's cities were crowded, chaotic, and unpredictable. Crime was common, political loyalties were fragmented, and the risk of recognition by nobility, officials, or citizens was ever present. Peter's height, commanding presence, and fiery demeanor made him difficult to conceal. Yet he employed simple disguises, altered speech, and careful timing to blend in with the populace. Each excursion demanded vigilance, adaptability, and courage, qualities that Peter had honed through both natural curiosity and political necessity. One of Peter's primary objectives during these incognito ventures was to observe Russian artisans, shipbuilders, and engineers. He wanted to understand the processes behind essential trades, identify skills lacking in his country, and gather practical knowledge to bring back to his modernization projects. Walking among shipwrights on the Moscow River, or visiting blacksmiths, carpenters, and masons, Peter examined tools, techniques, and labor methods with keen attention. His observations were meticulous, often noting details that would later inform the creation of shipyards, factories, and schools of technical expertise. Yet these excursions were not purely educational, they were also a test of character and loyalty. By mingling among citizens, Peter could observe the honesty, ingenuity, and resilience of the people. He listened to grievances, witnessed cunning negotiations, and observed everyday life in its rawest form. These experiences allowed him to distinguish between mere compliance and genuine competence, between loyalty born of fear and loyalty born of respect and admiration. Peter's observations extended beyond craft and skill. He also gained insight into the social and economic challenges faced by his subjects. Overcrowded homes, long working hours, harsh living conditions, and the resilience of ordinary Russians revealed the pressures of survival under a hierarchical and often rigid social system. These insights underscored the human cost of governance and the importance of practical reform, lessons that would drive Peter's ambitious modernization agenda and his attempts to reshape Russian society along more efficient and technologically advanced lines. However, even as Peter gained invaluable knowledge, one question remained unresolved. Could a monarch, even one as determined, enduring as Peter, ever fully grasp the daily realities of those he ruled, even in disguise? That Tsar's presence inevitably influenced interactions, perceptions, and behavior. Could the insights he gleaned reflect true experience, or were they always filtered through the lens of authority and observation? Peter the Great's ventures into the lives of his subjects highlight a monarch willing to confront danger, embrace curiosity, and seek understanding firsthand. They reveal a ruler blending strategy, audacity, and pragmatism, stepping beyond the ceremonial and political to engage directly with the human realities of governance. Through these journeys, Peter not only observed life but also shaped his vision for the future of Russia, one grounded in knowledge, innovation, and a deep understanding of the capabilities and resilience of his people. Peter the Great's incognito journeys through Russian towns and cities were far from leisurely strolls. They were exercises in observation, risk, and practical learning. The streets of Moscow and provincial towns were bustling with activity, filled with merchants, artisans, laborers, and peasants, all engaged in the work of daily survival. Peter, disguised in plain clothing and carefully altering his posture and voice, moved among them, listening, questioning, and witnessing life as it unfolded. One particularly illuminating encounter occurred in a shipyard along the Moscow River. Peter, working among carpenters and shipwrights, observed techniques that were crude by European standards, but ingeniously adapted to local materials and labor constraints. He asked questions about construction, measurements, and methods, sometimes joining in physically to understand the challenges firsthand. Workers, unaware of the Tsar's identity, were candid in describing difficulties, frustrations, and inefficiencies, offering Peter invaluable insight into the gaps in skill and infrastructure that hindered Russia's naval ambitions. Yet these excursions were not without danger. The Tsar's distinctive stature and confident manner made concealment difficult. On more than one occasion, sharp-eyed citizens or officials noticed the unusual presence of a foreign-appearing merchant, or a man asking too many probing questions. Peter had to rely on quick thinking, improvisation, and occasional retreat to avoid exposure. The risk was heightened by political tension and the ever-present possibility of dissent. as some nobles and local officials resented the centralization of power and the scrutiny imposed by the monarch as disguised observation. Peter's adventures also revealed the creativity and resilience of the Russian people. He saw artisans improvising solutions to material shortages, peasants negotiating cleverly to sustain livelihoods, and communities collaborating to solve practical problems. These glimpses into ingenuity were not just educational, they were profoundly human. Peter recognized that these small acts of survival and adaptation reflected the strength and potential of his people, lessons he would later leverage in efforts to modernize Russian society and industry and marketplaces. Peter observed economic dynamics firsthand. Merchants maneuvered within the constraints of taxation, guild regulations, and supply shortages. Citizens expressed opinions sometimes candidly, sometimes veiled about policies, officials, and governance. By witnessing these interactions, Peter gained a nuanced understanding of public sentiment and the practical realities of enforcing royal edicts. These experiences illustrated the delicate balance between authority and autonomy, obedience and initiative, which would remain central to his approach to governance. Perhaps most striking were the lessons in human psychology. Peter noticed how fear, respect, ingenuity, and loyalty intertwine in daily life. Workers responded to incentives, social pressure, and personal relationships rather than abstract royal commands. Citizens engaged in small acts of resistance, subterfuge, or creativity to navigate rigid structures. Observing this interplay informed Peter's understanding that lasting reform required not just authority, but practical engagement, training, and an appreciation for human adaptability. Yet even as Peter gained profound insights, one unresolved question lingered. Could a ruler ever truly understand the lived experience of his people when his identity, power, and status remained unavoidable factors in every interaction, even disguised? Peter remained an observer, a figure apart, whose presence influenced behavior. Could the knowledge he acquired fully reflect reality, or was it inevitably filtered by circumstance, perception, and authority? Despite these limitations, Peter the Great's incognito journeys profoundly shaped his vision for Russia. They provided practical knowledge of trades, infrastructure, and human behavior that informed military, industrial, and educational reforms. They highlighted the gaps between policy and practice, revealed hidden potential, and underscored the human resilience that would sustain his modernization efforts. Peter's experience demonstrates that effective leadership requires curiosity, courage, and immersion in the realities of the governed. By moving among his subjects, he bridged, even temporarily, the gap between authority and experience, learning lessons that no courtly report or advisor could convey. These journeys revealed both the potential and limits of observation, shaping a ruler who combined bold ambition with grounded understanding, strategic insight with empathy, and vision with practical knowledge. Peter the Great's incognito ventures through Russian towns and cities ultimately yielded insights that would shape the future of the nation. While moving among citizens in disguise, he not only observed their daily struggles, but also discovered talents, skills, and innovative solutions that were previously hidden from the gaze of the palace. These observations became the foundation for Peter's ambitious modernization efforts, illustrating how first-hand experience could transform governance and policy. One significant revelation occurred during a visit to a provincial shipyard. Peter noted the ingenuity and adaptability of local craftsmen who used limited tools and materials to construct functional, if rudimentary, vessels. He realized that with proper training, investment, and exposure to Western techniques, these artisans could significantly enhance Russia's naval capabilities. This insight directly influenced his later establishment of state-run shipyards, specialized schools, and apprenticeship programs designed to elevate craftsmanship across the empire. Beyond technical skills, Peter's journeys revealed the resilience and resourcefulness of ordinary Russians. He witnessed families supporting one another through scarcity, communities improvising to solve problems, and individuals navigating bureaucratic constraints with creativity. These experiences underscored a critical lesson for the Tsar: reform and modernization would succeed only if they accounted for the human realities of labor, adaptation, and ingenuity. Policies imposed without understanding would falter, but grounded, informed initiatives could unleash untapped potential. Peter's observations also highlighted the limitations of authority and perception. Even in disguise, he could not fully escape the influence of his own power. Citizens treated him with subtle deference, caution, or curiosity, revealing the complex dynamics of respect, fear, and loyalty in a hierarchical society. Yet these interactions were invaluable. They allowed Peter to see how people navigated power, how social structures constrained action, and how ingenuity emerged under pressure. This understanding informed not only policy decisions but also the methods by which he implemented reforms, blending authority with practical engagement. The risks inherent in these excursions were ever present. Peter faced near exposure on multiple occasions, highlighting the tension between curiosity and danger. Yet the lessons outweigh the threats. He gained insight into economic activity, social networks, and the subtleties of human behavior, discovering patterns and solutions that would have remained invisible from the palace. These experiences reinforced the importance of observation, empathy, and adaptability in effective leadership through these clandestine journeys. Peter also recognized the value of education and knowledge transfer. By witnessing gaps in skill and understanding firsthand, he could design programs to teach modern techniques, foster innovation, and expand opportunities for social mobility. His reforms in shipbuilding, industry, and military training all bear the imprint of these observations, illustrating how direct engagement with citizens' realities can drive transformative change at a national scale. Yet, even as Peter implemented sweeping reforms, one question persisted: could a monarch ever fully grasp the lived experience of a people, separated by status, power, and circumstance? Peter's insights were remarkable, yet inevitably partial. They reflected observation filtered through perspective, authority, and the unavoidable awareness of his own role as ruler. Still, the attempt to bridge this divide speaks volumes about his approach to leadership, curiosity, and reform. Peter the Great's incognito experiences leave a powerful historical lesson. True understanding of society requires more than decrees, counsel, or ceremonial observation. It demands immersion, attention to detail, and the courage to step into the lives of those governed. Through these secret journeys, Peter gained knowledge, perspective, and empathy, tools that enabled him to reshape Russia, modernize its economy and military, and leave a lasting impact on the nation. In the end, Peter's story reminds us that leadership is not only about authority or power, but also about engagement, observation, and the willingness to learn from the very people whose lives one seeks to improve. His adventures among the common people of Russia reflect a balance of audacity, curiosity, and strategic insight that transformed a kingdom and left a legacy still remembered centuries later. Imagine the young Emperor Meiji walking through the streets of Tokyo, blending in with commoners, his regal presence hidden beneath simple clothing. Japan was transforming rapidly, shifting from centuries of isolation to a modern nation. And yet the emperor chose to witness this change firsthand, not from palace windows, but among the people themselves. What did he learn about the ambitions, struggles, and resilience of his citizens that official reports could never convey? When Emperor Meiji ascended to the throne in 1867, Japan was at the cusp of dramatic transformation. The Meiji Restoration marked the end of the Tokugawa shogunate and the beginning of an era dedicated to modernization, industrialization, and centralization of power. The young emperor faced a nation grappling with internal divisions, resistance to reform, and the challenges of integrating Western technologies and ideas, while maintaining cultural identity. Recognizing the importance of understanding his people, Meiji occasionally ventured incognito into the streets, markets, and villages of Japan to observe life as it truly was. Unlike European monarchs or Russian Tsars, Meiji's focus was uniquely oriented toward modernization and societal transformation. He sought to understand how ordinary citizens navigated a rapidly changing world, how merchants adapted to new trade practices, how farmers responded to taxation and technology, and how workers adjusted to emerging industries. Disguised as a commoner, he could move freely, listen, and observe without the barrier of palace formality or courtly hierarchy. The emperor's excursions revealed the complexities of daily life. During a period of rapid change, he saw artisans learning Western techniques, merchants negotiating contracts with foreign traders, and citizens debating the merits and drawbacks of modernization. He observed the tension between tradition and innovation, witnessing the delicate balance families and communities struck as they negotiated between cultural heritage and the demands of progress. These observations offered insights far beyond what formal reports could provide, grounding Meiji's policies in lived reality. Yet these ventures carried inherent risk. Japan, though unified under imperial authority, was still marked by political tension, social unrest, and the potential for localized resistance. Exposure could have led to panic, political scandal, or attempts on the emperor's life. To mitigate these dangers, Meiji adopted careful disguises, altered his speech and posture, and often traveled with trusted attendants positioned inconspicuously nearby. Every step required vigilance and awareness of both the environment and human behavior. One of the most critical aspects of Meiji's observation was his attention to industry and trade. By visiting workshops, markets, and ports, he could assess the efficiency, skill, and innovation of his workforce. He noticed gaps in training, inefficiencies in production, and opportunities for technological adoption. These insights informed policies that promoted industrial education, technical schools, and infrastructure development, setting the stage for Japan's rapid rise as a modern nation. Equally revealing were the social and psychological lessons Meiji gained. He witnessed how people adapted to changing norms, balanced loyalty with skepticism, and exercised ingenuity under constraints. He observed the subtle ways citizens expressed opinion, dissent, or support, and he noted how social cohesion and trust influenced the success of reforms. These lessons in human behavior were critical for guiding policies that relied not only on law and decree, but also on social acceptance and participation. Yet even as Meiji observed, one question remained unresolved. Could a monarch, no matter how perceptive, ever fully understand the experience of a society undergoing such rapid and profound transformation? Even incognito, Meiji's presence influenced behavior, and every insight was inevitably filtered through his perspective as ruler. Could he truly grasp the aspiration, fears, and challenges of a people navigating modernization, or was his understanding always partial, mediated by circumstance and status? Emperor Meiji's secret observations highlight the intersection of leadership, curiosity, and strategic insight. They demonstrate a ruler willing to step beyond ceremonial authority, risk personal safety, and immerse himself in the realities of everyday life. Through these journeys, Meiji gained knowledge, empathy, and perspective tools that would guide Japan through one of the most transformative periods in its history. Emperor Meiji's journeys among his citizens were far from ceremonial strolls. They were calculated exercises in observation, risk, and strategic insight. As he walked through Tokyo's crowded streets, the alleys of provincial towns, and the bustling docks, he encountered the complexities of a society in transition. Disguised as a commoner, Meiji could witness firsthand the tension between traditional customs and the pressures of modernization. One particularly striking experience occurred in a textile workshop in a provincial city. Meiji observed workers laboring with handlooms, struggling to meet the demands of growing markets. He noticed inefficiencies, lack of standardization, and gaps in training problems that no official report had accurately conveyed. By conversing with workers and understanding their daily routines, He gained insight into the skills, limitations, and potential of his people. These observations would later inform initiatives to introduce technical education, vocational training, and methods to improve productivity without undermining existing expertise. The emperor also faced unexpected challenges. Some citizens were wary of strangers, and suspicion occasionally arose. On more than one occasion, a perceptive merchant or craftsman questioned his knowledge, making Meiji carefully improvise his responses to avoid revealing his identity. The tension of maintaining a disguise while extracting truthful observations demanded quick thinking, composure, and adaptability. Each near discovery was a lesson in risk management and human behavior, teaching the emperor how authority, perception, and ingenuity intersected in real-world settings. Meiji's excursions revealed the resourcefulness and resilience of ordinary Japanese citizens. He saw families improvising to manage scarcity, merchants innovating to remain competitive in a changing economy, and communities cooperating to overcome obstacles. He noted that these acts of creativity were not just practical, they reflected the underlying adaptability and intelligence that would enable Japan to modernize successfully. Observing the human element of innovation firsthand reinforced the importance of grounding reform. In lived experience, in marketplaces and ports, Meiji noticed the interplay of commerce, tradition, and adaptation. Merchants balanced foreign influences with local practices. Workers negotiated within guild rules, and artisans experimented with techniques to satisfy changing demand. The emperor observed the subtle negotiation of loyalty, respect, and risk that shaped daily interactions. These insights were crucial. They revealed how society could respond to reform, highlighting opportunities to encourage modernization while mitigating resistance. Beyond economics, Meiji gained social and psychological understanding. He witnessed citizens expressing caution, creativity, and subtle dissent, realizing that reforms imposed from above required careful communication and engagement. People's behavior was guided by incentives, social norms, and personal judgment as much as by law. Observing these dynamics gave the emperor a nuanced understanding of loyalty, governance, and the human consequences of reform. Yet even as Meiji absorbed these lessons, one question lingered. Could he truly grasp the experience of a society transforming so rapidly? Even incognito, his presence inevitably influenced behavior, and his insights were filtered through his perspective as ruler. Could a monarch fully perceive the hopes, fears, and ingenuity of people navigating such profound change, or would understanding always be partial, shaped by circumstance and status? Despite these limitations, Emperor Meiji's incognito observations had an immediate and lasting impact. They informed policies promoting education, infrastructure, and industrial development. They guided reforms in trade, technology, and social organization, ensuring that modernization was not merely imposed, but adapted to human realities. By witnessing challenges firsthand, the emperor could craft strategies that balanced authority with empathy, innovation with tradition, and ambition with practicality. Peter the Great had once walked among his people to understand industry. Now Emperor Meiji followed a similar path, demonstrating that leadership requires engagement, courage, and the willingness to confront reality directly. Through observation, the emperor gained knowledge, perspective, and strategic insight that allowed him to guide Japan into a modern era, ensuring that transformation was grounded in the lived experience of those it affected most. Emperor Meiji's clandestine excursions among his citizens ultimately bore profound fruit, shaping the trajectory of modern Japan. By moving through streets, workshops, and marketplaces unnoticed, he gained insights that no report, meeting, or official correspondence could provide. These journeys revealed the gaps, challenges, and potential within Japanese society, enabling him to craft reforms that were not only ambitious but also grounded in reality. One of the most significant lessons came from observing artisans and industrial workers. Meiji noticed that while citizens were industrious and skilled, many lacked access to modern techniques, tools, and education. This insight directly inspired the creation of vocational schools, technical institutes, and apprenticeship programs designed to elevate the nation's workforce. By combining traditional skills with Western methods, Japan could modernize rapidly without eroding the cultural knowledge embedded in local craftsmanship. Meiji's excursions also illuminated social and economic dynamics. He observed families navigating scarcity, merchants adapting to foreign competition, and communities negotiating with local officials. These experiences highlighted the importance of balancing central authority with local flexibility, ensuring that reforms accounted for human behavior and practical realities. Policies implemented without understanding would have faced resistance. Those informed by observation, however, were more likely to succeed. The emperor's engagement with citizens also revealed the subtleties of loyalty and dissent. While many expressed respect, some voiced criticism in indirect ways through humor, debate, or subtle negotiation. By witnessing these interactions, Meiji understood that governance was not merely a matter of issuing edicts, but of cultivating legitimacy, trust, and adaptability. He realized that the success of modernization depended on the willingness of people to participate, innovate, and embrace change. Lessons that informed his approach to leadership throughout the Meiji era. Perhaps most importantly, Meiji learned the value of empathy and perspective. Observing hardships, ingenuity, and daily resilience underscored the human dimension of reform. Citizens were not merely subjects to be directed. They were partners in the process of nation building. By stepping into their world, even briefly and in disguise, the emperor internalized lessons about human capability, adaptability, and the limits of power when unaccompanied by understanding. Yet even as these insights shaped policy, one question lingered. Could a ruler ever fully comprehend the lived experience of those they govern? Meiji's journeys were revealing, but his perspective remained inherently filtered by status, knowledge, and purpose. Still, the act of observation itself, of listening, seeing, and engaging allowed him to bridge the gap between authority and human reality in ways that few monarchs attempted. The outcomes of these clandestine excursions were visible across Japan. Modern infrastructure, industrial growth, technical education, and the integration of Western knowledge were all informed by Meiji's first-hand observations. His reforms transformed Japan from a feudal, isolated nation into a centralized, technologically advanced state capable of competing on the global stage. These changes were not just structural, they reflected an understanding of human potential, resilience, and the importance of aligning policy with lived reality. Emperor Meiji's story demonstrates that leadership is as much about observation and understanding as it is about authority. By stepping into the lives of his citizens, he gained knowledge that shaped education, industry, governance, and social cohesion. His incognito journeys exemplify a monarch who combined curiosity, courage, and strategic insight, revealing that transformative reform depends on engagement with reality rather than abstract power. Alone, in the end, Meiji's clandestine observations left an enduring lesson. Lasting change arises from a deep understanding of people, not just policies. By witnessing the lives of his citizens firsthand, the emperor ensured that modernization was practical, informed, and aligned with the resilience and capabilities of those it affected most. His story reminds us that leadership, curiosity, and direct engagement with reality are timeless tools for shaping history. Picture King Charles II, the merry monarch of England, slipping through the darkened streets of London, blending among commoners. His royal identity hidden beneath plain clothing. The king, renowned for his charm, wit, and political acumen, sought first-hand insight into the lives of his subjects amid a city rife with commerce, intrigue, and social complexity. What did he discover about London's people, their struggles, and the resilience of a society recovering from revolution and plague? Charles II ascended to the English throne in 1660, restoring monarchy after the tumultuous years of the English Civil War and the interregnum. The nation he inherited was fractured politically, socially, and economically. London, the heart of England, bore the scars of civil conflict, plague, and fire. Yet it also teemed with life, commerce, and the persistent energy of its citizens. Understanding the city and its inhabitants was critical for a monarch seeking stability, loyalty, and insight into the practical realities of governance. The king's fascination with London streets and citizens was both strategic and curious. He wanted to observe the workings of daily life, the resilience of common people, and the honesty or deceit of merchants, tradesmen, and officials. Reports from advisors often filtered or sanitized reality, emphasizing order, loyalty, or political convenience. Charles, aware of these limitations, occasionally took to the streets in disguise, mingling with ordinary citizens to witness life directly and without pretense. Charles's disguises were simple, but effective. He would wear plain clothing, adjust his gait and posture, and alter his speech to blend with the bustling city. He visited taverns, markets, and workshops, listening to conversations, observing transactions, and noting both the ingenuity and the challenges of Londoners. These excursions were dangerous. The streets could be treacherous, and recognition could spark panic, scandal, or political complications. Yet the king persisted, driven by curiosity and the need for insight. One of Charles's primary objectives was to understand commerce and trade. London was a hub of activity, with merchants negotiating deals, artisans producing goods, and dock workers handling imports from across the world. By observing the flow of goods, the negotiation tactics of merchants, and the challenges faced by workers, Charles gained first-hand knowledge of economic realities. He could see which industries were thriving, where inefficiencies existed, and how ordinary people adapted to the pressures of taxes, regulation, and social expectation. Beyond economics, Charles also sought insight into the social fabric of his capital. He watched how communities interacted, how disputes were resolved, and how trust and loyalty operated in a city recovering from civil war. He noted subtle forms of dissent, expressions of opinion, and the ways citizens navigated authority, giving him a more nuanced understanding of human behavior, social cohesion, and the distribution of influence. The king's observations revealed the resilience and ingenuity of ordinary Londoners. Despite hardship, disease, and social upheaval, people found ways to sustain livelihoods, negotiate challenges, and innovate solutions to everyday problems. For a monarch accustomed to courtly opulence and ceremonial life, witnessing these small yet significant acts of human persistence offered lessons in practicality, adaptability, and the real-world consequences of governance. Yet even as Charles gained these insights, one unresolved question remained. Could a monarch truly comprehend the lives of the people he ruled, while remaining a figure of power, even in disguise? Every observation was inevitably filtered by perspective, authority, and circumstance. Could the king's understanding ever fully reflect the lived experiences, hopes, and fears of his citizens, or would it always remain partial? King Charles II's secret excursions into the streets of London highlight a ruler willing to step beyond ceremony, risk personal safety, and engage with the practical realities of his city. They demonstrate the value of first-hand observation, curiosity, and empathy in leadership, showing that even a monarch renowned for charm and entertainment could seek knowledge through immersion. Through these journeys, Charles gained insights that informed governance, policy, and his understanding of the human spirit, revealing lessons that resonate far beyond 17th century London. King Charles II's incognito ventures through the streets of London were exercises in both observation and courage. Unlike the sheltered halls of surmise, the city was unpredictable, crowded, noisy, and full of people whose lives were shaped by hardship, ingenuity, and survival. Charles moved among them cautiously, disguised in plain clothing, adjusting his posture, speech, and demeanor to blend seamlessly with the bustling population. One of his most revealing excursions took him to the docks along the Thames. Here, sailors, merchants and laborers navigated a chaotic web of trade, taxation, and bureaucracy. Charles observed firsthand the skill required to load ships, manage cargo, and coordinate commerce. He noted the ingenuity of workers who circumvented inefficiencies, devised new methods for transporting goods, and negotiated under pressure. These insights offered a window into the practical realities of trade that no courtly report could capture, revealing both strengths and vulnerabilities in England's economic backbone. Yet danger was never far. The streets of London could be perilous, especially for someone moving alone and unrecognized. On several occasions, Charles narrowly avoided confrontation with suspicious citizens or watchful authorities. Maintaining his cover demanded constant vigilance, improvisation, and rapid thinking. Each near discovery reinforced the delicate balance between observation and risk, a balance that offered lessons not only in understanding human behavior, but also in assessing the vulnerabilities and resilience of his city. Beyond the docks, Charles explored workshops, taverns, and marketplaces. He watched artisans at work, noting the precision of craftsmen and the improvisation required to maintain quality. Under limited resources, he listened to merchants negotiating prices and contracts, observing strategies, deception, and negotiation tactics in taverns. He overheard candid conversations about taxation, governance, and political opinion. These experiences revealed the subtleties of loyalty, dissent, and the ways people expressed opinions safely in a hierarchical society. Charles's observations illuminated the ingenuity and resilience of Londoners. Families struggled with scarcity, yet found ways to maintain livelihoods. Workers collaborated, improvised, and adapted to changing economic circumstances. Citizens navigated bureaucratic constraints with creativity and caution. Through these encounters, Charles gained a deeper appreciation for the daily realities of life in his kingdom, understanding that effective governance required knowledge not only of law and policy, but also of human behavior, resourcefulness, and social dynamics. The king also learned about the social networks that maintain cohesion in the city. Neighborhood alliances, guilds, and informal systems of support help citizens survive and thrive amidst political uncertainty and economic pressure. Charles saw that loyalty to the crown depended not just on decree or fear, but on the sense of fairness, opportunity, and engagement experienced by subjects in their daily lives. These observations would later inform his approach to balancing authority with practical understanding of human needs. Yet even amid these lessons, one unresolved question persisted. Could a monarch ever fully grasp the lived experience of those he governed while remaining a figure of authority? Even in the skies, Charles influenced interactions. His perspective was inevitably shaped by power, knowledge, and intention. Could the insights gained truly reflect the complexity, resilience, and ingenuity of the populace, or would they remain partially filtered through the lens of monarchy? Despite these limitations, the incognito excursions were transformative. Charles gained knowledge that could inform governance, illuminate societal strengths and weaknesses, and guide policies that balanced authority with practical understanding. He learned how ordinary people adapted to hardship, innovated under pressure, and maintained resilience, a perspective that reshaped his appreciation for the challenges of leadership and the human capacity to endure and thrive. King Charles II's story illustrates the importance of observation, curiosity, and engagement in leadership. By stepping into the streets of London, he confronted danger, learned from ordinary citizens, and gained insights unavailable through formal channels. These excursions not only informed policy, but also revealed the dynamic interplay between authority, human behavior, and the practical realities of urban life. Lessons that remain timeless in understanding governance and society. King Charles II's clandestine journeys through London ultimately yielded insights that shaped both his understanding of governance and his approach to leadership. By moving unseen among citizens, he witnessed the realities of urban life, the challenges of trade, and the resilience of ordinary people. These observations provided a perspective that formal reports from courtiers or officials could never replicate, offering the king a nuanced understanding of loyalty, ingenuity, and social dynamics. One of the most consequential revelations occurred in the bustling markets and workshops of the city. Charles observed merchants negotiating contracts, artisans adapting traditional techniques to meet new demands, and dock workers managing the flow of goods under intense pressure. These encounters revealed not only economic challenges but also human ingenuity, the ability of individuals and communities to improvise, collaborate, and persist despite constraints. For the king, these insights underscored the importance of practical understanding and implementing effective policy and maintaining stability. Charles also learned about the subtleties of public opinion, even disguised. He could sense dissatisfaction, hope, and the delicate balance between respect and fear that governed social interactions. Citizens expressed opinions indirectly, through conversation, satire, or observation of authority figures. Recognizing these cues allowed the king to appreciate that governance was as much about perception, trust, and engagement as it was about decree or law. He understood that maintaining loyalty required insight into human behavior, not merely enforcement of authority. The risks and challenges of incognito travel reinforced lessons in leadership. Navigating the crowded, unpredictable streets of London demanded vigilance, adaptability, and quick thinking. Encounters with suspicious citizens, confrontations in taverns, or near discoveries taught Charles that power alone could not ensure understanding or control. Leadership required immersion, attention, and humility, the willingness to witness reality, even when it was messy, inconvenient, or uncomfortable. These experiences directly influence his policies and governance style. By understanding economic bottlenecks, labor challenges, and social networks, Charles could make informed decisions to support commerce, address grievances, and encourage civic stability. He also recognized the need to balance tradition with innovation, authority with empathy, and law with practical understanding of human behavior. These insights contributed to a reign characterized by charm, diplomacy, and pragmatism, blending the ceremonial authority of monarchy with practical engagement with the citizenry. Yet even with these insights, one question remained. Could a monarch ever fully grasp the complexity of the lives of those he ruled? Even in disguise, Charles's perspective was filtered through privilege, awareness, and intent. He could witness, listen, and engage, but the lived experience of Londoners, their fears, hopes, and daily struggles remained partially beyond reach. This limitation, however, did not diminish the value of his observations. Rather, it highlighted the importance of curiosity, humility, and continuous engagement in leadership. In the end, King Charles II's incognito journeys illustrate the transformative potential of observation and direct engagement. By stepping into the streets of London, he gained insights into economic resilience, social dynamics, and human ingenuity. These lessons informed governance, policy, and the exercise of authority, ensuring that leadership was grounded not only in power, but in understanding. His story demonstrates that curiosity, courage, and immersion in the realities of citizens' lives are timeless tools for shaping effective and empathetic leadership. Charles's adventures remind us that even the most celebrated monarchs relied on firsthand knowledge to guide their decisions. By witnessing the resilience, ingenuity, and adaptability of Londoners, he learned that leadership is most effective when it combines authority with observation, strategy with empathy, and ambition with an understanding of the people it seeks to serve. These lessons echo across centuries, revealing that the human dimension of governance is as crucial as policy, wealth, or ceremony.